Garden of Moonlit Whispers. Moonbeams danced across my gossamer wings as I floated through the masquerade, my fairy costume catching starlight with each step. Candlelight flickered against crystal chandeliers, casting shadows that waltzed along marble walls. I hadn't wanted to come to this Halloween party, but something, destiny perhaps, had pulled me here tonight. My best friend Sophie had insisted, spending hours helping me create my costume. Hand-painted wings that shimmered with actual crushed crystals, a gown that seemed woven from morning mist, and a crown of fresh herbs from my tiny apartment garden. The Victorian mansion hosting the party breathed old-world elegance. Vines crept up stone walls outside, and I'd noticed a neglected garden glimpsed through floor-to-ceiling windows. My fingers had itched to bring it back to life, to coax green things from the sleeping earth. That's what I did. Brought beauty back to forgotten spaces. My day job as a landscape designer paid the bills, but my true passion lay in healing herbs and the ancient magic of growing things. Weaving between guests in their elaborate costumes, I caught his gaze from across the grand ballroom. Amber eyes gleamed beneath an artfully crafted werewolf mask, dark fur framing a face that seemed to hold ancient secrets. His presence commanded attention without demanding it, a quiet power that drew me like a moth to flame. The wolf costume wasn't the typical Halloween store variety. It looked handmade, with actual leather work and what appeared to be real fur. Leaves and small twigs had been woven into the design, creating the impression of a creature that had just emerged from some enchanted forest. Our eyes locked through our masks, and the bustling party faded to whispers around us. He moved toward me with fluid grace that belied his fierce costume, weaving through the crowd as if drawn by an invisible thread. A subtle scent of cedar and sage surrounded him, so different from the cologne other men wore. "I'm Raphael," he said, his voice rich as honey over warm bread. His slight accent hinted at Mediterranean roots. "And you're the most enchanting fairy I've ever seen. The rosemary in your crown. It's the Spanish variety, isn't it? Rare in these parts." Heat bloomed in my cheeks beneath the shimmer of fairy dust makeup Sophie had insisted on. "Gina," I managed, grateful the glitter hid my blush. "Though tonight I'm going by Thistle. And yes, good eye. The rosemary came from my own plants. Most people wouldn't notice the difference." "Thistle," he repeated, tasting the name. "Perfect for a garden fairy. Beautiful but with hidden strength. Protection and pride in the language of flowers." My pulse quickened. "You know the language of flowers?" "Among other old magics," he said, his eyes twinkling behind the mask. "Your herbs. The rosemary for remembrance, lavender for peace and devotion woven through your hair. The tiny sachets of protective herbs tucked into your costume seams. You practice the old ways." I caught my breath, surprised and delighted. "How did you know all that?" "The same way I sense the garden magic running through your veins. It calls to my own." He gestured to his costume. "The wolf represents more than meets the eye. In the old stories, we were the guardians of wild places, of ancient groves and hidden gardens." The music swelled around us, something classical and sweeping. Raphael extended his hand, somehow elegant despite the claws of his costume. "Dance with me? We can trade garden secrets while we move." Floating. That's how it felt as we moved together, my wings catching moonlight while his fur gleamed silver. Other couples blurred around us as we spoke of plants and poetry, of the magic that lives in small moments. His knowledge of herbs matched my passion for growing things. He knew the old names, the folk uses, the secret ways of planting by moon phases. "I restore gardens," he said as we waltzed. "Take old estates and bring their green spaces back to life. But my land, it needs something more. Someone with vision, with magic in their soul." "How much land?" I asked, attempting to sound casual while every cell within me vibrated with excitement. "An acre behind my grandfather's old stone cottage. Good earth, just sleeping. waiting. His eyes held mine. It needs both sunlight and shadow to thrive properly. Dreams blossomed in my mind, raised beds overflowing with healing herbs, moonflowers climbing trellises, paths winding through beds of lavender. Like a fairy and a wolf? I suggested, surprising myself with my boldness. Raphael's smile beneath his mask held promises. Exactly like that. We danced through the night, sharing stories between songs. He told me of his Italian grandmother who taught him herbcraft, of the gardens he'd restored across Europe before settling here. I shared tales of my own grandmother's teaching, the tiny fire escape garden that had sparked my passion, and the healing teas and tinctures I crafted in my kitchen. Dawn approached too quickly, painting the sky in watercolor hues. As the other guests began to leave, we lingered in the mansion's own neglected garden, trading secrets between overgrown rose bushes and whispered hopes beneath weeping willows. When he kissed me, the stars seemed to shimmer brighter overhead. His mask pushed up, mine tilted aside. The moment was pure magic. "Come see my land tomorrow," he whispered against my hair. "Bring your fairy magic. We could create something extraordinary together." The next day dawned crisp and clear. I dressed carefully. Sturdy boots, comfortable clothes, but I wove herbs into my braided hair for luck and protection. Raphael met me wearing well-worn work clothes, looking somehow equally handsome as he had in his wolf costume. His land took my breath away. The cottage was built from honey-colored stone, with climbing roses that had gone wild around the windows. The acre behind it sloped gently toward a small stream, perfect for a water garden. Old fruit trees dotted the landscape, their branches reaching for the sky like gnarled fingers. Weeks passed quickly after that first weekend. We spent our days planning and planting, transforming his wild acre into something from a fairy tale. Raphael built raised beds while I researched companion planting. We argued playfully over where to place the herb spiral, then celebrated each tiny seedling that pushed through the rich soil. Our garden became our sanctuary. Moonflowers and night-blooming jasmine for him, morning glories, and sun-loving herbs for me. We planted motherwort for love, roses for romance, and lavender for peace. Between the rows, our love grew like wild roses, unstoppable and beautiful, thorns and all. Each section of the garden held its own magic. The healing garden was filled with medicinal herbs: echinacea, yarrow, calendula, and chamomile. The kitchen garden overflowed with culinary herbs and old varieties of vegetables. The magical garden held the traditional witches' herbs: mugwort, wormwood, rue, and belladonna, carefully tended and respected. Raphael built archways for climbing plants, his strong hands shaping metal into elegant curves. I created moon gardens in shadowy corners, filling them with white flowers that glowed in twilight. Together we placed benches in secret nooks and created hidden paths that wound like dreams through the growing green. Spring painted our world with possibilities. We spent endless weekends working side by side, sharing thermos cups of tea and stolen kisses between tasks. Raphael taught me Italian plant names while we worked. I showed him my grandmother's secret ways of talking to plants. Our magics merged and grew stronger together. We created hidden nooks with curved benches, where we'd sit wrapped in blankets during midnight storms. Wind chimes sang silver songs while butterflies danced through dill flowers. Raphael carved protection runes into the garden gates, while I blessed each new planting with ancient whispered rhymes learned from my grandmother. The garden seemed to respond to our combined energy. Plants grew stronger, bloomed longer, and produced more abundantly than either of us had seen before. Visitors began to comment on the special feeling of the space, a sense of peace, of magic, of possibilities. Summer arrived with abundance. Together we harvested herbs by moonlight, his strength complementing my knowledge of drying times and storage. Our little cottage filled with bundles of herbs hanging from rafters, their fragrance wrapping around us like magic. We made medicines and teas, tinctures and treats, sharing our bounty with neighbors who soon spoke of the miraculous healing properties of our herbs. I gave up my apartment and moved into the cottage, bringing my own herbs and books to join his. We converted the spare bedroom into an herb processing room, with drying racks and storage shelves. The kitchen windowsill overflowed with potted herbs, and dried bouquets hung from every beam. Neighborhood children began to visit, drawn by the magic of the space. We taught them about butterflies and bees, and the importance of growing things. Local herbalists and gardeners sought us out, and soon we were hosting monthly gatherings where people could learn and share knowledge. Autumn painted our garden in gold and amber, colors that matched Raphael's eyes. As leaves fell, we planted bulbs for spring, each one a promise for our future. We added cold frames and greenhouses, extending our growing season like we extended our love, defying natural limits through dedication and care. The cottage transformed alongside the garden. Raphael's grandfather's old furniture found new life with fresh cushions I sewed, stuffing the fabric with lavender and herbs for sweet dreams. We painted walls in earthy colors and hung dried flower wreaths in every room. The kitchen became a workshop where we experimented with new herbal blends and recipes. Even in winter, our garden lived. Evergreen herbs stood strong against snow. Witch hazel bloomed like yellow stars. We spent long evenings by the fire, planning next year's plantings while sharing spiced tea made from our own herbs. The wolf and the fairy, creating magic from soil and love. 1 year after our first meeting, on Halloween night, Raphael led me to the garden's heart. He'd created an arch of roses and moonflowers, their blooms glowing like pearls in the silver light. This time, we wore no masks, just our true selves, surrounded by the magic we'd grown together. "You've transformed more than this garden," he said, dropping to one knee in the soil we'd enriched together. The ring he offered gleamed in the moonlight, silver, set with tiny pressed herbs in clear resin. "You've transformed my whole world. Marry me, my fairy queen. Rule this magical realm by my side." Tears sparkled on my cheeks like morning dew. "We did it together," I whispered. The garden needed both of us, sunlight and shadow, morning and night, fairy and wolf. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Our wedding was held in the garden we'd created, fairy lights twinkling in trees we'd planted together. Herbs and flowers we'd grown ourselves decorated every surface. I wore a gown embroidered with herbs and flowers, and Raphael wore a suit with a boutonniere of herbs for love and fidelity. The air smelled of lavender and roses, of dreams made real through patience and love. We wrote our own vows, promising to tend to our love as carefully as we tended our garden, to nurture growth, to weather storms together, to always make space for magic. Our rings were carved with tiny leaves and flowers, blessed under the full moon in our herb garden. Now, years later, our garden has become known throughout the region as a place of healing and hope. People travel from miles around to walk our herb-lined paths, to sit in our meditation spaces, and purchase our healing blends. Some say they can feel the magic in the air, the love between fairy and wolf that infuses every plant, every stone. We've added new sections each year, a butterfly garden, a bee-friendly meadow, and a small orchard of heritage fruit trees. Each addition reflects another facet of our growing love, another layer of magic we've discovered together. The garden has become a living book of our love story, written in flowers and herbs and twining vines. Each Halloween, we host a masquerade in our garden. Raphael wears his wolf mask, I don my wings, and we dance beneath the stars like we did that first night. But now we're surrounded by the magic we've grown together, a living testament to how love, like a garden, can transform the wildest space into something beautiful. Young lovers often ask us our secret. We just smile and share what we've learned. Love, like a garden, needs both light and shadow. It needs space to grow wild and boundaries to grow strong. It needs daily tending and magic in equal measure. But most importantly, It needs two hearts willing to grow together through all seasons. Every morning, I still wake to find dew on the herbs like scattered diamonds. Every evening, I still watch moonflowers open their faces to the stars. And every moment between, I fall more in love with the wolf who helped a fairy create this magical space. This garden, where two worlds merge into something more powerful than either could be alone. Our cottage has grown too, with a sunroom full of tender plants and a workshop where we teach others the old ways. We've published books on herbal lore and magical gardening, sharing our knowledge while keeping the deepest magic for ourselves. Our unique blends of tea and healing herbs are sought after across the country. Some say you can't build a life on fairy tales, but Raphael and I know better. We've grown our own fairy tale from the ground up, nurtured it with love and intention, and watched it bloom into something more magical than dreams. Our garden stands as living proof that when the right souls meet, magic isn't something that just happens in stories. It grows wild and free, like herbs breaking through stone, like love blooming in unexpected places, like a fairy and a wolf creating their own enchanted world. Each season brings new growth, new challenges, and new magic to discover together. Our love, like our garden, continues to evolve and flourish, sending roots deep into the earth while reaching ever skyward. Sleep now, dream of magical gardens and masked balls, of love that transforms and grows. For in every seed we plant, in every flower that blooms, there lives the possibility of magic. Let the whispers of herbs and the song of night-blooming flowers guide your dreams to peaceful places. Beneath the moon's gentle glow, our garden whispers ancient secrets. True love, like the most potent herbs, grows stronger with each passing season. And if you listen closely to the wind in the roses, you might hear our story carried on the breeze, the fairy and the wolf who grew a paradise from love. Rest here a while in our garden of dreams, where magic blooms eternal and love grows wild and free. Let the peace we've cultivated seep into your soul, and may you find your own magical garden of the heart. For in the end, love is the greatest magic of all, and every garden holds the potential for transformation. Sweet dreams, dear ones, and remember, sometimes the most enchanted stories begin with a simple costume party and a heart open to magic.